The small ship moved through space like a shadow. No human radar could see it. No human eye could spot it against the dark sky. Inside the ship, Commander Zethkar sat in his metal chair and looked at the blue planet below him. Earth. The third planet from a yellow star. Home to 7 billion creatures called humans. Zethkar had cold gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were black like deep space. He came from a race called the Vorthak. His people ruled over 50 worlds across the galaxy. They were strong. They were smart. They did not feel things the way other creatures did. Feelings made you weak. Feelings made you slow. Feelings got you killed. The Hegemony Council had sent him here with one job. Look at the humans. Study them. See if they were worth keeping alive when the big ships came. Most planets had creatures that could be useful. Some could dig in mines, some could build things, some could fight in wars. But if a species was too wild or too stupid, the Hegemony would simply wipe them out and take their world. Zethkar expected this to be easy. He had done this work on 12 other worlds. The pattern was always the same. He would watch the creatures for a few days. He would see them fight each other over food and land. He would see the strong hurt the weak. He would see parents abandon their young when times got hard. Then he would write his report and recommend conquest. Simple. His ship dropped lower into Earth's atmosphere. The blue sky turned to white clouds, then to the brown and green surface below. Zethkar chose a large city to start his work. The humans called it Chicago. From space, he could see it was full of buildings and roads and millions of the creatures, moving around like insects. He made his ship invisible and flew over the city. Below him, he saw exactly what he expected to see. Humans in metal vehicles that moved fast and made loud noises. Humans walking on stone paths, pushing past each other. Humans gathered in groups, shouting at other groups. It looked like chaos. It looked like a world ready to be conquered. Zethkar landed his ship on top of a tall building and began his real work. He put on a device that made him invisible to human eyes. Then he walked down into the city to watch them up close. The first thing he noticed was how different they all looked. On most worlds, the creatures all looked the same. But humans came in many colors and sizes. Some had dark skin, some had light skin. Some were tall, some were short. Some had hair on their heads that was yellow like their sun. Others had hair that was black like space. This was strange but not important. What mattered was how they acted. Zethkar watched them for hours. He saw humans grab food from other humans. He saw them push smaller humans out of their way. He saw them make loud noises at each other with angry faces. He saw them throw waste on the ground and not care about making their world dirty. This was normal. This was what he expected. He walked through parts of the city where humans lived in broken buildings. The air smelled bad. Trash covered the ground. Some humans lay on the street with no homes to go to. Others walked by them without stopping to help. Zethkar nodded to himself. These creatures cared only about themselves. They were selfish and cruel, perfect for slavery. But then something caught his attention. A large white building with many windows. Above the door, words were written in the human language. Zethkar's translation device told him what they meant. Children's Hospital. This was a place where humans brought their sick young ones. Zethkar had seen buildings like this on other worlds. Usually the strong creatures would bring their young here and leave the weak ones to die. It was an efficient way to keep only the best of their species alive. He decided to observe this building to confirm that humans followed the same pattern. He walked through the walls of the building, his invisible body passing through solid matter like it was air. Inside, he saw long white halls filled with the smell of cleaning chemicals. Humans in white and blue clothes moved quickly from room to room. Some pushed small humans on beds with wheels. Some carried bottles of liquid that dripped into the arms of sick humans through thin tubes. Zethkar found the area where they kept the smallest humans, the young ones. In his experience, this was where he would see the truth about any species. How they treated their weak and sick young ones told him everything he needed to know about them. He expected to see adults dropping off sick children and leaving them to live or die alone. He expected to see the humans in white clothes giving medicine only to the strong children and letting the weak ones suffer. He expected to see efficiency and coldness. Instead, he saw something that made him stop and stare. A small human child lay on a white bed. The child was very sick. Tubes went into his nose and arms. Machines around the bed made soft beeping noises. The child's eyes were wide with fear, and water leaked from them down his cheeks. Next to the bed stood a female human in white clothes. She had brown hair and tired eyes, but her face was soft and kind. She held the child's small hand in her larger one. She spoke to him in a quiet voice. "It's okay, Jake," she said. "I know you're scared, but we're going to take good care of you. Your mama and papa are right outside and they love you so much." The child called Jake looked up at her. "Will it hurt?" he asked in a small voice. "We'll make sure it doesn't hurt," the female said. "I promise you that. And you know what? When you wake up, you're going to feel so much better. You'll be able to run and play again." Then the female did something that made Zethkar's forearms freeze in place. She began to make soft musical sounds with her voice. She was singing to the child. The melody was simple and gentle. The child's fear seemed to fade as he listened. His eyes grew heavy and soon he was sleeping peacefully. Zethkar stared at this scene for a long time. The female human stayed by the child's bed even though her work was done. She watched over him as he slept. She adjusted his blanket when it slipped down. She checked the machines that kept track of his health. She did all of this even though the child was not her own offspring. This made no sense to Zethkar. Why would she waste time and energy on a creature that shared none of her genetic material? Why would she show kindness to something that could not help her survive or become stronger? Why would she promise to prevent pain when pain was a natural part of existence? These questions troubled him as he continued to observe the hospital. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same strange behavior. Adult humans caring for young humans who were not their own. Humans working long hours to save the lives of complete strangers. Humans showing what appeared to be genuine concern for creatures they had never met before. Zethkar had been trained to recognize deception. These humans were not pretending to care. Their body language, their facial expressions, their voice patterns all indicated that their concern was real. But this made no logical sense according to everything he knew about intelligent life in the galaxy. As the day turned to night, Zethkar found himself still watching the building. He told himself he was gathering data. He told himself he was looking for signs of the cruelty and selfishness he knew must be hidden beneath this strange display of care. But deep in his three-chambered heart, something was beginning to change. Something he had no words for. Something that would challenge everything he believed about the nature of intelligent life in the universe. The next morning, Zethkar left the hospital feeling confused. He had spent the whole night watching the humans care for their sick young. Every time he expected to see them give up on a weak child, they worked harder to save it. Every time he thought they would choose the easy path, they chose the difficult one instead. This was not normal behavior for any species he had studied, but maybe the hospital was different. Maybe these humans were paid extra to act this way. Zethkar decided to look at other parts of human society. Surely he would find the selfishness and cruelty that all intelligent species showed when they thought no one was watching. He walked through the city streets as the sun came up. Humans hurried past him on their way to work. They looked tired and worried about their own problems. This was more like what he expected to see. Self-interested creatures focused only on their own survival. Then he heard a sound that made him stop. It was a loud wailing noise coming from down the street. Red and white vehicles with flashing lights raced past him. The translation device told him these were emergency vehicles. Something bad was happening. Zethkar followed the sounds. He found a crowd of humans gathered around a tall building. Black smoke poured from the windows on the third floor. Orange flames could be seen through the glass. Fire, one of the most dangerous things in the universe. Even the bravest warriors of the hegemony feared fire. The humans were all backing away from the building. They pointed at the windows and made worried noises with their mouths. This was smart behavior. When there was danger, the logical thing to do was run away from it. Zethkar nodded. Finally, these creatures were acting in a way he could understand. But then more vehicles arrived. Humans wearing heavy yellow suits and hard hats jumped out. They carried long hoses connected to their trucks. They ran toward the burning building, instead of away from it. Zethkar watched in confusion as they sprayed water at the flames. One human seemed to be their leader. He was taller than the others and shouted orders. His name was written on his suit, Ryan Burke. He pointed at the building and talked quickly into a small device. "There's a family on the 3rd floor," Ryan said. "We need to get them out now." Zethkar calculated the odds. The building was full of fire and smoke. The structure could fall down at any moment. Any creature with basic survival instincts would stay far away. But these humans were choosing to go inside. Why would they risk their lives for creatures they didn't even know? Ryan and 2 other humans ran into the building carrying equipment. Zethkar followed them, his invisible form passing through the smoke and flames. Inside, the air was thick and black. The humans could barely see or breathe. They moved slowly up the stairs, calling out for the trapped family. On the 3rd floor they found them. A man, a woman, and 2 small children huddled in a bedroom. The door was blocked by burning wood. The family was coughing and scared. The smoke was getting thicker. Ryan and his team worked fast to clear the door. The fire was spreading. The heat was getting stronger. Zethkar's instruments showed that the building's structure was becoming unstable. These humans needed to leave immediately or they would all die. But Ryan didn't leave. Instead, he handed his breathing mask to the woman. "Take this," he said. "Cover your children's faces and follow us." "What about you?" the woman asked. "I'll be fine," Ryan said. Even though Zethkar's sensors showed his oxygen levels were getting dangerously low, Ryan led the family down the stairs through the smoke and flames. He stumbled and coughed, but he kept moving. He made sure the family stayed together. When one of the children fell, Ryan picked him up and carried him. When the woman couldn't breathe, Ryan gave her his mask again. They made it outside just as part of the ceiling crashed down where they had been standing. The family was safe. They hugged each other and cried with relief. Other humans cheered and clapped their hands. But Ryan wasn't done. He talked to his team and pointed back at the building. "There might be more people inside," he said. "We need to check every room." Zethkar couldn't believe what he was seeing. This human had just barely escaped death. The logical thing to do was stay outside where it was safe. But Ryan was preparing to go back into the burning building. Not because he had to, not because someone was forcing him, but because there might be other creatures who needed help. Ryan went back inside 2 more times. Each time was more dangerous than the last. Each time Zethkar was sure the human would not come out alive. But each time, Ryan emerged from the smoke, sometimes carrying people he had found, sometimes just checking to make sure no one else was trapped. After the 3rd trip, the other humans in yellow suits stopped Ryan from going back in. The building was too dangerous now. Even they could see it was about to fall down completely. Ryan stood outside, breathing hard and covered in black soot. His face was red from the heat, his hands were burned, but he kept looking at the building with worried eyes, making sure no one else was inside. Zethkar stared at this human for a long time. He tried to understand the logic behind Ryan's actions. The risk-to-reward ratio made no sense. Ryan had gained nothing from saving those people. He had put his own life in danger multiple times for creatures who were complete strangers to him. He had given his own breathing equipment to others when he needed it himself. This was not how intelligent species were supposed to behave. In the galaxy, the strong took care of themselves first. The weak were left behind. Resources went to those who could fight for them. But these humans seemed to have it backward. They gave their resources to the weak. They risked their lives for strangers. They chose to help others even when it put them in danger. Zethkar left the fire scene and walked through the city, thinking about what he had seen. Maybe Ryan was unusual. Maybe most humans were not like him. He needed to see more examples before he could understand this species. He found himself in a different part of the city. The buildings here were older and smaller. Many had broken windows or peeling paint. The humans walking around looked poor. Their clothes were old and torn. Some looked hungry. Zethkar saw a large building with many small humans going in and out. His translation device told him it was a school, a place where adult humans taught knowledge to young humans. He decided to observe this place to see how humans treated their young when they were trying to learn. Inside the school, the halls were noisy with the sounds of small humans talking and laughing. The walls were painted bright colors, but the paint was old and chipped. The floors were clean but worn. Everything looked like it had been used for many years without being replaced. Zethkar found a room full of small humans sitting at desks. At the front of the room stood an adult female human. She had dark hair and kind eyes. She was teaching the young humans how to read words from a book. "Remember," she said to them. "Sound out each letter. Take your time. There's no rush." One small human raised his hand. His name was Tommy. "Mrs. Santos, I can't read this word, it's too hard." The female human, Mrs. Santos, walked over to Tommy's desk. She knelt down next to him so she was at his eye level. "Let's look at it together," she said. "What's the first letter?" "T," Tommy said. "Good. And what sound does T make?" They worked through the word slowly. Mrs. Santos was patient and encouraging. When Tommy finally read the whole word correctly, she smiled big and told him he did a great job. Zethkar watched this scene repeat with other young humans. Mrs. Santos helped each one who needed it. She never got angry when they made mistakes. She never gave up on the ones who learned slowly. She treated each young human like they were important. But what really caught Zethkar's attention was what happened after the learning time was over. The young humans lined up to get food, but many of them had no food to eat. Zethkar watched Mrs. Santos quietly give sandwiches to the hungry ones. She used her own money to buy food for young humans who were not her children. Later, when the school day was ending, some young humans stayed behind. They needed extra help with their learning. Mrs. Santos could have gone home to rest. Instead, she stayed to help them. She worked with a young female human named Ashley who struggled to read. She helped her sound out words just like she had done with Tommy earlier. "I'm stupid," Ashley said when she couldn't read a sentence. "No, you're not," Mrs. Santos said firmly. "You're learning. Everyone learns at their own speed. You're doing great." Mrs. Santos stayed with Ashley until the girl could read the whole page. It took a long time. The sun was getting low in the sky. But Mrs. Santos never acted like she had somewhere else to be. She gave Ashley all her attention and time. When Ashley finally left, Mrs. Santos sat alone in her classroom. She looked tired. Zethkar's sensors showed that she had been working for 10 hours without a break. She had spent her own money on food for her students. She had given her free time to help the ones who needed extra learning. Zethkar tried to calculate the benefit Mrs. Santos received from these actions. She was not paid extra for buying food for students. She was not paid extra for staying late to help them learn. She gained nothing material from these choices, yet she made them every day. As he left the school, Zethkar felt that strange sensation in his chest again, the same feeling he had experienced at the hospital. Something was happening to him that he didn't understand. Zethkar spent the next day walking through the city, trying to understand what he had seen. His mind kept going back to the firefighter and the teacher. Both had acted against their own interests to help others. This went against every rule of survival that existed in the galaxy. Maybe these were special cases. Maybe most humans were different. To test this, Zethkar decided to look at human warriors. In his experience, soldiers were the most practical creatures on any world. They understood that strength mattered. They knew that only the strong survived. He found a large building with the human flag flying above it. His translation device told him it was a place where human warriors went when they were hurt in battle, a veterans' hospital. Perfect. Here he would see how humans really treated each other when survival was at stake. Inside the building, Zethkar saw many humans who had been damaged in war. Some walked with metal legs. Some had lost arms. Some sat in chairs with wheels because their legs didn't work anymore. These were the wounded warriors of humanity. In most species, wounded warriors were left to die or abandoned when they could no longer fight. Resources were too valuable to waste on creatures who couldn't contribute anymore. Zethkar expected to see the same thing here, but instead he saw humans in white coats working to fix the broken warriors. They gave them new metal legs and arms. They taught them how to walk again. They spent time and money helping creatures who would never be able to fight again. This was puzzling, but Zethkar had seen medical treatment before. Some species kept their wounded alive if they could still be useful in other ways. What he saw next, however, made no sense at all. In a large room filled with soft chairs, Zethkar saw a human warrior sitting across from a young human male. The warrior was older, maybe 40 human years. He had no legs. His metal chair had wheels. His name tag said Danny Rodriguez. The young human looked sad and angry. His right arm was missing from the shoulder down. His eyes were red like he had been crying. He stared at the floor and didn't want to look at anyone. "I used to be a Marine," the young human said. His voice was quiet and full of pain. "I was good at it. I was strong. Now look at me. I'm useless. I can't do anything right. I can't even tie my shoes with one hand." Danny Rodriguez looked at the young human with understanding eyes. "What's your name, son?" "Kevin. Kevin Hayes." "Well, Kevin, I know exactly how you feel. When I first lost my legs, I wanted to die. I thought my life was over. I thought I was worthless." Kevin looked up at Danny for the first time. "But you seem okay now." Danny laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "I'm not okay. I'm never going to be okay. Some days I still want to give up. Some days I hate what I've become. But I learned something important." "What?" "I learned that being strong isn't about having all your body parts. It's about what you do with what you have left." They talked for hours. Danny told Kevin about the dark days after he lost his legs, how he had pushed away his family and friends, how he had drunk too much alcohol to forget his pain, how he had thought about ending his own life. "What stopped you?" Kevin asked. "Another Marine like us. He lost both arms in the same explosion that took my legs. He came to see me when I was at my lowest point. He didn't try to cheer me up or tell me everything would be fine. He just sat with me and shared his own pain. That's when I realized I wasn't alone." Danny explained that he now spent his time helping other wounded warriors, not because he was paid to do it, not because anyone forced him, but because he remembered what it felt like to be where Kevin was now. "You saved my life today," Kevin said after they had talked for a long time. "No," Danny said. "I just reminded you that you're worth saving. You have to do the rest yourself." Zethkar watched this interaction with growing confusion. Danny Rodriguez gained nothing from helping Kevin Hayes. In fact, spending time with sad and broken warriors made Danny's own life harder. It reminded him of his own pain. It took energy he could use for his own healing. Yet Danny chose to do this work every day. He chose to carry the emotional weight of other warriors' suffering. He chose to give his time and attention to creatures who couldn't help him in return. This made no logical sense. Zethkar tried to find a practical reason for Danny's behavior. Maybe he was trying to feel important. Maybe he was trying to prove something to himself. But as he watched more closely, he realized that Danny genuinely cared about these other warriors. The concern in his eyes was real. The pain he felt for their suffering was real. After leaving the hospital, Zethkar walked through the city as night fell. He needed to think about what he had seen. 3 days of observation had shown him the same pattern over and over. Humans helping other humans, even when it cost them something, even when they gained nothing in return. His thoughts were interrupted by a crowd of humans gathered around a large building. They were standing in a line that stretched around the block. Most of them looked poor and hungry. Some carried small children. Some looked very old and weak. Zethkar followed the line to see where it led. At the front of the building, humans were giving out food to the hungry ones: hot soup, bread, and warm drinks. The building had a sign that said, "Community Kitchen." This was a place where humans fed other humans who couldn't afford food. What caught Zethkar's attention was not just that they were giving away food, it was who was giving it away. He saw humans who clearly didn't have much money themselves. Their clothes were old and worn. Their faces showed the stress of their own hard lives. Yet they were using their free time to help others who had even less. He watched an old human female with gray hair and wrinkled hands. She served soup to a long line of hungry people. Her name tag said Betty, and she smiled at each person as she gave them food. When a small child in line looked scared, Betty knelt down and spoke to him gently. "Are you hungry, little one?" she asked. The child nodded, but didn't speak. "Well, we have some special soup just for you, and maybe a cookie too if you want one." Kitlia, child's eyes lit up. He smiled for the first time since Zethkar had been watching. Later, Zethkar saw Betty outside the building. She was taking off her warm coat. A young human female was standing nearby, shivering in the cold. She had no coat of her own. "Here, dear," Betty said, putting her coat around the younger woman's shoulders. "You need this, more than I do." "But won't you be cold?" the young woman asked. "I'll be fine," Betty said. "I have a warm home to go to. You don't." Betty walked away into the cold night wearing only a thin shirt. Zethkar's sensors showed that the temperature was dropping below safe levels for humans. Betty would be very cold on her walk home. Yet she had chosen to give her coat to a stranger. Inside the building, Zethkar saw more of the same behavior. A human male named Carl was washing dishes even though he was clearly very tired. His clothes were old and patched. His hands were rough from hard work. He looked like he had his own problems to worry about. "Why do you do this?" "Another human asked Carl. "You work all week at your regular job. Why spend your weekend here too?" Carl stopped washing dishes and thought for a moment. "Because I remember what it felt like to be hungry. I remember what it felt like when no one cared if I lived or died. If I can make sure someone else doesn't feel that way, then maybe my own pain meant something." Zethkar listened to these words and felt something crack inside his chest. Carl wasn't helping others because it made him feel good. He was helping because he understood their pain. He was choosing to carry their suffering along with his own. As the night went on, Zethkar saw more examples of this strange human behavior. A man gave his last few dollars to buy food for a hungry family. A woman spent her only day off work, helping to serve meals to strangers. A young human used his own car to drive elderly people to the food kitchen because they couldn't walk that far. None of these humans were rich. None of them had extra resources to spare. Yet they all chose to give what little they had to others who needed it more. Zethkar tried to understand this through the lens of his own species. The Vorthak were logical. They were practical. They understood that resources were limited and should go to those who could use them most effectively. They understood that helping the weak only made the group weaker overall. But these humans seemed to operate by different rules. They saw weakness and chose to share their strength. They saw suffering and chose to take some of it on themselves. They saw need and chose to give even when they had little to give. As Zethkar walked back through the city, he passed by all the places he had observed over the past 3 days. The hospital where humans healed strangers' children. The fire station, where humans risked their lives for people they didn't know. The school where humans spent their own money to feed and teach other people's children. The veterans' hospital where broken humans helped other broken humans find reasons to keep living. The community kitchen where poor humans fed other poor humans. In each place he had seen the same thing. Humans choosing to help others even when it cost them something. Humans caring about strangers as if they were family. Humans sharing their resources, their time, their energy, and even their emotional pain with others who needed it. This was not how intelligent species were supposed to behave. This was not how evolution was supposed to work. The strong were supposed to survive and the weak were supposed to be left behind. Zethkar sat in his ship staring at the blinking communication device. The message from the hegemony fleet was clear and urgent. Admiral Korvex wanted his report immediately. The invasion ships were already moving toward Earth's solar system. They needed to know how to proceed. For the first time in his long life, Zethkar didn't know what to write. He had been trained to evaluate species based on simple criteria. Were they strong enough to be useful? Were they weak enough to conquer easily? Were they too dangerous to let live? But humans didn't fit into any of these categories. They were not particularly strong physically. Their technology was primitive compared to the hegemony. Their weapons were simple. By all logical measures, they should be easy to conquer. Yet something about them made Zethkar hesitate. Something he had never encountered before in all his years of conquest. The communication device beeped again. This time it was a direct call from Admiral Korvex himself. Zethkar had no choice but to answer. The Admiral's harsh face appeared on the screen. His gray skin was marked with scars from many battles. His black eyes showed no emotion. Commander, Zethkar, you are overdue with your report. The fleet is in position. We need your assessment now. Admiral, Zethkar said carefully, the situation here is more complex than expected. I need more time to complete my evaluation. Admiral Korvex's eyes narrowed. Complex. How can 7 billion primitives be complex? Are they armed with weapons we don't know about? Do they have hidden defenses? No, Admiral, their military capabilities are exactly what we expected. But there are other factors to consider. What factors? Zethkar struggled to find words. How could he explain what he had seen to a species that had no understanding of compassion? How could he make the Admiral understand that humans were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of something much more powerful? They have developed certain behavioral patterns that make them unpredictable, Zethkar said finally. Behavioral patterns? The Admiral's voice was getting angry. Commander, you were sent to evaluate their military strength and their usefulness as slaves, not to study their behavior like some scientist. Give me your recommendation now. Zethkar looked out at the city below. In his mind, he could see all the humans he had observed. The doctor singing to a scared child, the firefighter risking his life for strangers, the teacher spending her own money to feed hungry students, the wounded soldier helping another wounded soldier find hope, the poor people sharing their food with other poor people. I need one more day, Admiral. There are still aspects of their society I need to understand. Admiral Korvex's face turned darker. You have 6 hours, Commander. If I don't have your report by then, I will assume they are ready for immediate conquest and proceed accordingly. Don't disappoint me. The screen went dark. Zethkar was alone again with his thoughts and his growing confusion. He decided to make one final observation. He wanted to see how humans behaved when they were truly tested, when they had to choose between their own survival and helping others. This would give him the data he needed to make his final report. He left his ship and walked through the city until he found what he was looking for. An old human male had collapsed on a busy street. The man was clutching his chest and breathing hard. His face was pale and covered with sweat. Zethkar's medical sensors told him the human was having a heart attack. Without immediate help, he would die. This was the perfect test. Zethkar positioned himself where he could watch how the other humans reacted. Would they help a stranger who was dying? Or would they walk past and worry only about their own lives? The first human to see the collapsed man was a young female in business clothes. She was talking on a small communication device and walking fast like she was late for something important. When she saw the man on the ground, she stopped. For a moment, Zethkar thought she might walk past. She looked at her device like she was worried about being late. She looked around like she was hoping someone else would handle the problem. But then she put her device away and knelt down next to the old man. Sir, can you hear me? She asked. Are you okay? The old man could barely speak. My chest, he whispered. Can't breathe. The young female immediately pulled out her device and called for help. I need an ambulance, she said. There's a man having a heart attack on 5th Street. While she waited for help to arrive, she stayed with the old man. She held his hand and talked to him in a calm voice. Help is coming, she said. You're going to be okay. Just keep breathing. More humans began to gather around. Instead of just watching, they helped. One man took off his jacket and put it under the old man's head. A woman brought water from a nearby store. Another person directed traffic around the scene so the ambulance could get through. When the ambulance arrived, a female human in uniform jumped out. Her name tag said Julie Parker. She quickly checked the old man's condition and began working to save his life. She gave him medicine and attached machines to his chest. She worked with focused intensity, like this stranger's life was the most important thing in the world. "Come on, Frank," she said to the old man. "Stay with me, don't give up." Zethkar watched as Julie worked. She could have done the minimum required by her job. She could have been quick and efficient and nothing more. But instead, she put everything she had into saving this one old human's life. When Frank's heart stopped beating, Julie didn't give up. She pressed on his chest with her hands, trying to make his heart start again. She tried again and again, even when it seemed hopeless. "Please," she whispered, "please don't die on me." And then, somehow, Frank's heart started beating again. His eyes opened. He looked up at Julie with confusion and gratitude. "You saved me," he said weakly. Julie smiled, and Zethkar saw something that made the crack in his chest split wide open. There were tears running down her face. Not tears of pain or sadness, but tears of joy. She was crying because a complete stranger was going to live. As the ambulance drove away with Frank inside, Zethkar stood among the crowd of humans who had helped. They were all smiling and talking about how glad they were that Frank was okay. These strangers cared about what happened to a man they had never met before and would probably never see again. Zethkar walked back to his ship with his mind spinning. In every species he had studied, individuals cared only about themselves and their immediate family groups. But humans seemed to care about everyone. They treated strangers like family. They shared the pain of creatures they didn't know. They celebrated the survival of people who meant nothing to them personally. This was not weakness. This was not inefficiency. This was something far more powerful than any weapon the hegemony possessed. It was the ability to make connections with other beings based not on genetic relationship or mutual benefit, but on simple recognition of shared existence. Humans had built their entire civilization on this principle. They helped each other not because they had to, but because they chose to. They shared resources not because it was efficient, but because it was right. They cared for the weak, not because it made them stronger, but because they believed every life had value. Zethkar reached his ship and sat down at his communication console. The words of his report began to form in his mind, but they were not the words the hegemony expected to read. He thought about what would happen if the invasion fleet arrived. The humans would fight, of course, but they would also do something else. They would help each other. They would share their resources with the weak. They would risk their lives to save strangers. They would never stop caring about each other, even under the worst circumstances. The hegemony could conquer their cities and destroy their armies. But they could never truly defeat a species that chose love over logic, sacrifice over survival, hope over despair. Humans would continue to be human no matter what happened to them. And eventually, their way of thinking would spread to their conquerors. Zethkar realized that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something new in the galaxy, something that could change everything about how intelligent beings related to each other. They were too dangerous to conquer because they would never stop being who they were. And they were too precious to destroy because the galaxy needed what they had to offer. With trembling hands, Zethkar began to type his final report. "Admiral Korvex," he wrote, "after extensive observation, I have determined that the human species represents an unacceptable risk to hegemony operations. They possess capabilities that could fundamentally undermine our social structure and military discipline. I recommend immediate withdrawal from this system and permanent classification of Earth as a forbidden zone." He paused, knowing that his next words would probably mean his death. The humans have developed a form of collective behavior that makes them impossible to control through traditional conquest methods. They value individual lives over efficiency. They share resources based on need rather than merit. They form emotional bonds with unrelated individuals that override logical self-interest. Exposure to these concepts could cause widespread disruption among our own forces. Zethkar finished his report with the formal conclusion: Species assessment. Incompatible with hegemony integration. Recommend quarantine and non-interference protocols.